Hello, hello, everybody. This is Nico from Unicorn Riot. We are in Chicago at the People's Summit. This is the third and final day, and today we are joined by Medea Benjamin. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Good to be with you.
All right, all right. So we have Medea here, and Medea's going to talk about Code Pink. She's going to talk about some other things. We're going to start with the People's Summit. This is the third day. How have you enjoyed it, or what is your perception of this time so far at the People's Summit?
Well, my group, Code Pink, is focused a lot on foreign policy issues. And so I've loved the summit in terms of the energy, and Bernie gave a great talk, and there have been exciting workshops. But from the point of view of somebody who really focuses on foreign policy issues, it's like, where are they? And that's so strange to me because it seems a criticism that we had throughout Bernie Sanders' campaign is why isn't he addressing the issue of the empire, the huge Pentagon budget? If we want to fund healthcare and free public education and the needs of this community and infrastructure, where's that money going to come from? The bloated Pentagon budget. And now Donald Trump has handed us the perfect vehicle to talk about it, because in addition to the big Pentagon budget that already existed, he wants to add another $54 billion. And this time he's saying, we're going to take it from the EPA, we're going to take it from Meals on Wheels, we're going to take it from preschool child programs. You'd think we would all be able to come together and say at least no to that extra $54 billion for war. And yet I haven't heard that mentioned at all in the entire 3 days.
Wow. So you bring up some really good points. Also bring up, some maybe an oversight in the People's Summit bringing this up. But let's talk about this more a little bit further. So we have this Pentagon budget, this massive. Can you maybe talk about like some stats, the percentages of military expenditures, maybe even comparing? And you bring up the good point. Those resources could be used for other means. So when it comes to this Pentagon budget, what is the deal with it? How is it so expansive?
Well, the U.S. has always had a budget that is enormous, and in recent decades, we never got the peace dividend that we were supposed to get after the Vietnam War, and the Pentagon budget is, without the extra $54 billion, already bigger than the 8 next countries combined. So massive. And then along comes Donald Trump and he says, our military is decimated. We need more tanks. We need more planes. We need more troops. We need more Marines. We need more this. We need more that. And you would think that the most progressive voices in this country would be the loudest ones out there saying, no way. That's not why we're not winning wars. We're not winning wars because we're in wars we shouldn't be in. And we should be getting out of those wars instead of throwing more resources and more of our soldiers into them. While we were here at the summit, 2 soldiers got killed in Afghanistan. It's now almost 17 years we're in Afghanistan, the longest war the U.S. has ever fought in our entire history. I have not heard the word Afghanistan mentioned at all in this summit at a time when Donald Trump wants to send more troops to Afghanistan to guarantee that we will continue to be in this unwinnable war. So we're now, thanks to Donald Trump, going to spend more than 60% of our discretionary funds on the Pentagon, and yet we're arguing to see where we should be taking the money to provide things like free college education.
Really good point, really good point. So when it comes to Code Pink, can you talk about a little bit about Code Pink and the mission of Code Pink and what you all do?
Code Pink started when George Bush was threatening to take us into Iraq after the 9/11 attacks. And we, like so many people around the world, said, no, this makes no sense. Little did we know how absolutely catastrophic it would be, but we knew it was the wrong thing to do. So we formed around that. It's called Code Pink because George Bush, for your younger listeners who might not know, or your viewers, he had at that time a color-coded alert system. You remember that?
Where it was
the terror alert. There was the yellow, the orange, the red, make you feel scared, justify things like military invasions. And we said Code Pink was a different way of dealing with 9/11, which is deal with the individuals who attacked us and maybe even the country behind it, Saudi Arabia, because we should talk a lot more about that, but not use it to attack other countries like Iraq that had nothing to do with 9/11. So we have been working ever since then against the perpetual state of war that our country is in and calling for a reduction in the military budget, a closure of the 800 plus foreign bases that we have around the world that's only making enemies and not protecting us, and instead use our military to defend us at home and take these hundreds of billions of dollars we would save and invest it in things that we need at home, as well as things that would do good for people around the world, like the millions of refugees that have been created in large part because of our policies. I mentioned the catastrophic results of the invasion of Iraq. Well, look at the millions of refugees created, and the U.S. doesn't want to take in those refugees, and we don't want to give the massive amounts of money that are needed for the refugees from Syria, from Iraq, from Libya, from places that we are militarily involved. So that's been the mission of Code Pink.
Okay. And so you bring up a very, very, very good point about the refugees. This is probably the biggest refugee crisis in the history. And right now, it's caused by the Western imperial forces, military forces that are, like, as you said, responding to this war on terror. So when it comes to these refugees, when it comes to Afghanistan, Iraq, Code Pink, you all are sort of gearing your opposition to that at the Capitol. And can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how are you going about maybe picking your people that you're going to protest and how you're doing that?
Well, first let me say about the refugees, we also send people to places like Greece, to the border in Syria. I myself was at the border of Turkey in the refugee camps. We go to Jordan. We try to get people to care about the refugees, raise money for refugee projects. And then we also want to get at the root of the problem, which is the militarism. And so we go to, I live now in Washington, D.C., we go to the hearings, we go through the halls of power, we try to support bills that are being introduced in Congress, but we're really trying hard to rebuild an anti-war movement that was so strong under the Bush years but fell apart under Obama and is still not building itself up under Trump, which is hard to understand because Trump is now not only increasing the military budget that we talked about, but is taking some of the worst of what Obama did and increasing it. For example, Obama sold massive amounts of weapons to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the one country most responsible for the spread of terrorism. And here comes Donald Trump, and he's going to one-up Obama and sell even more weapons to Saudi Arabia. In the meantime, Saudi Arabia is destroying the neighboring country of Yemen, creating a humanitarian crisis of catastrophic proportions with 17 million people facing famine right now. And we're having a hard time injecting it even into a place as progressive as the People's Summit. So if you detect my frustration, it's because I'm trying hard to find ways to get people to understand the connections between all the issues that we care about and the perpetual wars that we have been involved in, and the fact that we are still an empire, squandering so much of our resources on trying to invade and occupy other countries, as well as supporting repressive regimes like the government of Israel, the repressive coup regime in Egypt. And I think that if we manage to get people to connect these issues better, we would be better able to confront the policies that both the Democrats and the Republicans have colluded on to continue to spend so many billions of dollars of our money on wars that are creating death, agony, and millions of refugees.
When it comes to these wars, do you think it's a mechanism of them perpetuating their monetary gain and their continual, expansion, or do you what do you think is driving these wars?
First of all, we should recognize what General Eisenhower told us in the early 60s, beware of the military-industrial complex. It is so strong. The power of these weapons industries is amazing. It can even take the most progressive of elected officials and have them voting for things like money to Saudi Arabia because they have Raytheon factories in their districts. So I would say it's money, money, money. If you look at the Saudi policy, it's oil, big oil, and it's the weapons industry. And unfortunately, the weapons manufacturers are so smart that they produce a piece of their weapons in every single congressional district. And then come election time, they give money to the Congress people. This is a corrupt system that is made up of a revolving door, that people go in and out of these companies into Congress. And it's part of a system that's become so corrupt that war is extremely profitable. And the voices of the war makers are unfortunately right now a lot stronger than the voice of the peacemakers.
So even when the peacemakers were in the streets, millions deep in 2003, 2004 during the anti-war campaign, it still couldn't stop this impenetrable war machine. What is the avenue out of this? What are ways that people can do at home, people can do in wherever to get out of this?
So what we have decided to do is take it to the institutions that invest in the war machine. And a divestment campaign like the fossil fuel industry has done, that goes to universities, pension funds, to all of the institutional investors, cities, our own cities, and say we have to pull our money out of the military complex. The other thing we've been doing is going city by city and passing resolutions saying we want money pulled from the Pentagon and put into our cities. We're taking that nationally to the mayor's conference that meets at the end of June, and trying to pass it nationwide. So these are some of the ways to come from the bottom up, because unfortunately from the top down, it's too corrupt.
Maybe a couple last questions. When it comes to, touched on it already, you have a Refugees Welcome shirt on. There was a Refugees Welcome banner that got dropped from the Statue of Liberty. Can you talk about just like the movement, even around in United States of America, around welcoming refugees?
I think we should connect it to the movement of welcoming immigrants, because this is a nation that's built by refugees, immigrants, slaves, Native Americans, but this is a nation that has become so cruel, looking at the people who are in desperate situations, whether or not it's caused by our policies. We should be caring about people in desperate situations around the world. It's a basic moral issue. I know I'm a mother. I've taught my children and now my grandchildren to care about people who are lacking in food and lacking in clean water and lacking in medicines. Do what we can for them. And as a nation, unfortunately, we have a guy in power now who's the top dog in the dog-eat-dog world, and wants to cut out the refugees, wants to take families who've been here, immigrant families, for decades and throw them out of this country. The very opposite of what we need to be as a nation, a kind, compassionate nation that welcomes people into our country when they're seeking refuge.
All right, so maybe the last question here, the People Summit. I'm hearing that they'll probably be planning this next year. There's going to be other such types of conventions. What do you hope in the future to tackle not only just the foreign policy needs that you're talking about that people need to be recognizing, but also just other things in general?
Well, I think the elephant in the room is the third party issue.
Okay, yeah.
And people are more and more critical of the Democratic Party, and it's great to hear the fiery speeches saying we don't have to stick with the Democrats. But then what do? I like the Green Party. I think it's great, but there's a lot of people who feel we need a new party that's going to come out of perhaps the Bernie Sanders movement. And that's why there's this campaign, Draft Sanders for a People's Party. I think it's a great idea, but I think it has to be clear that whether or not Bernie Sanders decides to join that, we're going to build up this party, and this party can incorporate the Greens and the Socialist parties and all of the smaller groups to have a significant alternative to the two-party system. So I hope that next year we have a much more open, forthright conversation about that.
All right, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add? People Summit, Code Pink, Refugees, foreign policy, anything?
We obviously are at a time when people are desperate for alternatives. A lot of people who voted for Trump were doing that out of disgust for politics as usual. I think we have to do a better job at reaching those people. We have to do a better job of having a big tent that people feel is a tent where there's a lot of good partying going on inside and they want to be part of. That we have to show the alternative lifestyles that are good for our planet, good for our community, good for our spirits. Show the joy and the beauty and the fun that you can have by being part of a movement. Make it so attractive that people really want to be part of it.
Well, thank you for joining us, Medea Benjamin from Code Pink. And thank you all for joining us. This is Nico from Unicorn Riot. We are here at the People Summit. If you like our work, go to unicornriot.ninja, support our work tab, and give what you can if you can. Monthly micro donators help us a lot. Again, thank you so much, and yeah, we'll see you again soon.